Before you slip into unconsciousness, I'd like to have another kiss, another flashing chance at bliss, another kiss, another kiss. The days are bright and filled with pain. Enclose me in your gentle rain. The time you ran was too insane. We'll meet again. We'll meet again. Oh, tell me where your freedom lies. The streets are fields that never die. Deliver me from reasons why you'd rather cry. I'd rather fly. The crystal ship is being filled. 1,000 girls, 1,000 thrills, 1,000,000 ways to spend your time. When we get back, I'll drop a line.
Don't get sucked into the state's celebration of belligerence. This is Thinking Liberty. It's Tuesday, May 3rd, 2011, and we're live and bombastic on thinkingliberty.net.
Thinking liberty, thinking liberty, thinking liberty. Woohoo!
Three-thing chance.
USA, USA.
Hey, you heard we beat Afghanistan in hockey.
Yeah, exactly. I heard war is over through killing.
Yeah, you know, they just killed that one guy, and now everything's better.
Woohoo! Kill one guy. Kill one guy.
Kill more guys.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading somebody's Facebook status, and they had a interesting quote. They're like, "I am anxiously awaiting the new enemy." Where they're talking about like how they're wondering what the next thing we have to fight is.
See, that's what Tennyson's doing. He's getting his suit on. He's getting his resume together.
Tennyson's the new enemy?
He's going, Mr. Obama, I hear there's an opening for public enemy number 1. I'm only saying that about Tennyson because he's not here. Perhaps he'll show up in the
Tennyson Diego.
Perhaps he'll show up in the chat. But I'm Darian. We've got Bosco over there.
USA. I'm going to say it. It's one of the most moronic things you can say. So you bet I'm going to chant it over. And somebody who's never listened to the radio show before is going to tune in and just hear USA, and then boom, that'll be the end of it. The worst anarchist podcast ever. Chanted USA.
I love the nation state. Nation state. Nation state. I think this whole show should be done in
tyranny.
Tyranny. Chants of 3 syllables or 3 items.
Antonio.
That was bile. That was bile.
Bile.
That doesn't work so well.
I don't know. We can make it work.
Sure.
Thinking ing. Liberty.
So anyway, we got bile here too.
Controlling the controls at the control table.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure you're supposed to say that. It
Control table. Control table.
Control us. Okay, so All right, but
It's like that. Did you see Roderick Long's most unlibertarian song ever that he posted the other day?
No.
I
It's like "Follow the Leader" from Disney's Peter Pan. I don't know if I've ever seen Disney's Peter Pan.
Peter Pantsless.
Yes. Or if I just haven't seen it in so long that I don't remember. But it's like the kids all marching, singing like "Follow the leader wherever he goes, whatever he does, we're following the leader." It's just like, 2 minutes of just totally
The brave and fearless leader.
Yes.
Our great and hallowed leader.
But it was Roderick Long on what is it? AEE. It's
AEblog.org.
Austro-Athenian Empire.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
I don't
Anyway.
know. There's probably less libertarian songs that have been out there in the world at some point, but that's a good candidate.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
How about that clip from Lord of the Lord of the Rings cartoon that you shared a while ago? It was like where there's a whip, there's a way. Or something.
Yeah, where there's a whip, there's a way. At least they were overt about their oppression. They're like, we are going to beat you until. And the funny thing is,
Is
it's
this the elves?
No, it's the it's like the trolls or something, but it's the oppressed people who
I wouldn't imagine it's the trolls.
Who is it?
The orcs,
The orcs,
perhaps?
Oh,
Probably.
sorry, my bad.
The Orcai or the
So
orcs?
it's them singing about their oppression, like kind of happily too. It's like the whole song's
so like
about
slave songs.
kind of, but it's like it's slave songs. I typically thought were about like freedom or how hard it is to work or things like that.
But
Like,
they're evil. So like slavery.
so they're okay with it. I mean, they're like, yeah, the whip. That's how things get done. Woohoo!
I mean, if you're bred to be evil, then I suppose you could breed like that kind of.
Actually, well, hold on. There is. I'm remembering the lyrics now. The first verse is I don't want to go to work today, but the Lord of the Lash says, "Hey, hey, hey." So,
hey.
so I guess they are kind of complaining in there too.
All right. So, all right. Well, what happened recently? Osama bin Laden reported dead by the U.S. Government. The first question: is he really dead? Was he really killed? I would say most likely. I definitely sympathize. I don't sympathize with, but I do sympathize with people who are questioning the veracity of these reports. However, if he's still alive, then that'll come out really
Wouldn't
quickly.
that be empathize?
Empathize
is
empathy means you share
you
that
understand.
experience.
Well, no, empathy is when you understand. Sympathy is when you agree.
No, I don't know about
No,
that.
I think empathy is when
sympathy
you've
is
had
just
the
when you-
experience happen to you.
I have to.
So
look this
in
up.
that case, you
All
can.
right.
Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's all right. If he would pretty much have to be dead by this point, because otherwise it'll be pretty obvious. It'll be pretty obvious when he turns up later that he's.
What if
not
he's
dead.
been dead for years? What about that?
That's a different question. However, I don't really think that the U.S. Empire would be that monolithic where no one would, claim credit for killing the biggest bad guy, and hey, we just happen to find another bad guy after that. It's not like these guys have to last them forever. They're kind of interchangeable. And then the other thing is that I think there would be more of a reaction from Al Qaeda if Osama had been
Watch
killed.
yourself there.
Yeah, it's hard because you especially if the next word is going to be a B word. It's very ironic that Obama is the guy who killed
Is
killed
it
Osama.
ironic, or is there a method to it? Is there some reason?
Well, it's interesting that this guy who's like
Show me the birth certificate.
Maybe he morphed. As you know, since he's a secret Muslim, he's just covering.
Yes,
For
yes.
like he's just covering. He faked Osama's death, and now he's gonna return as in an Iron Man suit, shooting missiles, because that's how things get done.
Obviously,
But yeah, I mean,
that's kind of our nationwide mentality, right? Shooting missiles. It's how things get done. Dropping bombs, shooting people in the head. I mean, obviously, that has that's going to have the best outcome.
Yeah.
violent. What's the phrase? Violence begets a good ending. I believe that's the phrase.
Of course. So then, other questions. I mean, first of all, we have to bring up amongst all the celebration. I think some things have been forgotten here. The fact that, whether or not this is justified, which we'll get into later, the specific mode. This isn't going to solve the problem. There are still going to be people getting angry at the U.S. and U.S. intervention abroad is going to cause more oppression, more destitution that really motivates terrorism. And it's interesting, commentators who are bringing up the whole Arab Spring, the uprisings that are going on in that area, that this kind of rendered Osama obsolete.
I think that really dealt more of a blow to the ideas of terrorism than I think anything else. The fact that you could show that there can be a peaceful method of achieving similar goals, and in fact, the peaceful method turns out to be more effective.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not necessarily peaceful versus violent. There has been violence in the Egyptian uprising. There's been violence, but it's been the goal isn't just this. The extent to which it's focused on, I think, is the main dividing point, and the way in which it's used. I mean, you didn't have people blowing up airliners, overthrowing the regime, but when there were clashes, people fought. So, there was violence, but it wasn't that violence was the number one point of the program. And I think part of that has to do with what these people rising up in the Middle East are for. They're for a more democratic, free society. They're not for, some kind of fundamentalist, authoritarian order.
Do we have a... You're shaking your head. We got a sympathy and empathy thing over there?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a little bit of...
ambiguity?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you are wrong.
But, so
you are wrong. You are wrong.
Sympathy.
Diffin...
Use the chant. You are wrong, so I win.
Diffin.com, DIFFEN.com, has a sympathy versus empathy chart, and it has... This is the definition of empathy is the ability to co-experience and relate to the thoughts, emotions, or experience of another without them being communicated directly by the individual. Sympathy is the ability to understand and to support the emotional situation or experience of another being with compassion and sensitivity. And then an easy definition, they have empathy being imagine the thoughts of a person you feel sympathetic for, versus sympathy, feel sorry for, feel pity or bad for. So, like, I can empathize on how aggravated you must feel over the loss of your beloved, versus I offer my sympathy at the loss of your loved ones.
So, I guess you're more correct than I was. But,
sympathy is more along with like feeling bad for, or feeling, bad for sympathy or
empathy.
Sorry for someone's scenario, like emotionally.
Yeah, sympathy is more on feeling. Empathy is more like something's communicated.
Yeah, like you understand their position. You might not agree, but you understand the position.
So neither of them were really correct for that. But empathy would be more correct. I think sympathy, though, is used in popular English in that way, but I guess that's not correct. So,
well, you think the moon landing was fake, right? And people make fun of you for that, so you can empathize with conspiracy theorists who take a lot of heat from people.
The moon landing was real. It was just not our moon. They went to a different dimension.
Okay, then you can definitely empathize. If you believe stuff like that, you can empathize with people who get told they're crazy.
All right. Also communism. All right, so, we have that, but so let's look at the actual act of killing Osama bin Laden. Was it justified? I would say that going after him as a criminal, there's no way that's not justified. However, the way in which it was done, first of all, we have to go back to when Bush refused to negotiate with the Taliban to hand him over. the Taliban wanted him to be tried in another country. I mean, it was a political power game on their part, for sure, but it's certainly a political power game on Bush's part. He didn't want this whole America communicating with the world. We're big and erect, and we'll take care of our own stuff. And certainly expanding U.S. hegemony, I'm sure, played a part, and resource accumulation and control did.
The word of the day is hegemony.
So,
Ding.
so right there from the
Hegemony.
hegemon. Is that
Okay,
like
well,
Pokemon?
let me riddle you this.
It's a Pokemon made of hedges.
So Osama bin Laden is killed. How does that offer any restitution for any of the things he did?
It's emotional restitution for probably a large portion of the individuals involved, either directly or indirectly.
Now,
And there certainly are members of those families who had had family members who died directly, who are part of the reopening the book on what actually occurred and question the official story. But I think that's a very small percentage of the probably tens of thousands of individuals. And I suspect most of them have some amount of emotional restitution that they feel from this.
well, I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that sounds like a very tough thing to measure or determine when it's warranted. I mean, the whole idea of emotional restitution is
I don't disagree, but I'm saying that I think that most people under average circumstances, when the killer who killed, who murdered or whatever, harmed one of their loved ones, gets theirs, so to speak, that they generally feel some amount of karma has come back to them. The world has been righted a little bit.
Well, I think that there are two stories, of course, on how Osama was ultimately killed. Number one, they went to arrest him. He resisted, so he was shot. But it seems there's at least a little bit of
From what I read, it was
conflicting information.
from what was it, yesterday night? There were the news agencies were reporting that I don't know if it was the military or the White House was just saying, yeah, that whole thing about potentially capturing him is BS. We were just going to go in there and kill him because we knew he was not going to come peacefully. And the AP article I read, this was Sunday night, I think, or Monday, early Monday morning. It's like, well, the U.S. has a policy of not shooting anyone who's trying to surrender, so they would have taken him captive.
Of course.
If which might technically be true, but then the only things running through my mind was but the United States government has no problem bombing weddings and with unmanned drones and stuff. But I doubt very much that he would have gone peacefully anyway. I think they probably could have attempted to take him, but they would have never wanted to actually bring him to trial because really, technically, it's a civil issue, and so he should have been, legally speaking, I think, brought back to New York and tried in New York State or New York City for his crime. And what they're not gonna, they don't want that. They'd rather shoot him or have him die somehow than actually have to go through that hassle. Whether because they don't for practical reasons, I think it would be too much to deal with. Trying to keep him safe and all that kind of crap. To have the illusion of justice, and then on the other side, just in the event itself would be more dangerous if they're trying to fill the place full of knockout gas in hopes that he doesn't either shoot himself or someone who's coming in. That's awful.
sounds
risky.
like old school Batman right there. Knockout gas.
Well, I mean, you could, right? You could do something like that, but
Yeah, the Russians tried that, and they just killed all the not all. They killed a bunch of hostages with the gas.
well,
too.
in this case, it wouldn't be as
the wrong
big.
amount.
Yeah, in this case, I don't think anyone would care if that was a side
Yeah.
effect. But
Well,
Zach
here's
has an interesting question too. I mean, if getting back to that idea of emotional restitution, would more emotional restitution be found if he was captured and tortured to death?
I don't know. It depends on. I mean, I'm just saying that from what has been reported and my experiences with other human beings in general, they generally are more content than not when a killer is murdered or shot or
Well,
whatever.
Here's the thing. I mean, from another standpoint, though, also, there are some reports saying that Bin Laden was not armed at the time he was taken. So I think the truth of this will kind of come out probably about the time you're downloading this podcast. You'll probably have a better idea than we do right now. But so there's a lot of conflicting reports. But let's say that they did go in with the intent of killing him. If this is being treated as a military issue, that oh god damn it, why did I just listen to Fox News on the way that Osama
Lousy anarchists.
was because his
Calling
middle
the
name
president a terrorist. Show some respect.
His
USA, USA.
also his middle name starts with a B. So if you're trying to rush through this, Osama bin Laden, he's
I don't think is that his middle name?
Obama bin Biden.
God damn it. Yeah. Yes, it's his middle name because I'll chant if you say otherwise. If he's a continuing threat, that he is continuing to rally people to take action against U.S. civilians, against Americans abroad, and against. I guess they kind of stopped going after Muslims in other countries to the same extent they used to. But if he's continuing either commanding or as the figurehead leader of this organization to instigate attacks, does that mean he's a continued threat, in which case killing him counts as a defensive measure? Now, if you say yes, then there's further problem that if he tries to surrender, you should capture rather than kill, even if they are a threat. But then there's the reality on the ground that these guys are going through this fortified mansion, which we'll have to get back to because that's a fun story. They're going through there, and they're face to face with this guy who's been the biggest demon out there, and they're face to face with him. I can see how they would either slip up or just shoot him.
Well, and he was apparently shooting at them. So
it's not
they said he
it's
was
not
unarmed.
certain. Some reports are saying he was unarmed. It's possible him and someone who's with them panicked and tried to run out or something, and they saw that as a threat. So it's hard to really say. But
there was his son, his 19-year-old son, was supposedly there, and some woman, and they died first, and then he was supposed to be the last one to go down. And certainly there was other gunfire going on. The one helicopter went down supposedly because of local gunfire on them.
Yeah, well, some say that it was also mechanical failure. It's once again, these reports I think will be better known in a week or so.
When the government gets its official stories in line.
Yeah. Well, all right. So justifying, I mean, I don't really feel bad for the guy. As I tend to not feel bad for political leaders when they get killed, especially particularly odious ones. So that's not really the issue. The issue is what kind of precedent it sets and what
practical aspects it may have.
What the practical implications are. Is it better in terms of safety that this guy was shot instead of captured? Is it and is it going to? What are the repercussions going to be? So, I don't know. Should we continue that, or should we switch on to another aspect of the story? One thing I think is. I don't know. You look like you were nodding in agreement. So
I just want to go on the record and say I don't think he should have been killed. I think I'm the only person in the room who feels that way, but I don't think.
Oh no, I agree. Ideally, I don't. But even the most horrendous people, I think there's, especially from a practical, non-theoretical aspect of just you likely can get more out of a person in the long run by not killing them than by killing them. But in that vein too, in a practical sense, from what I've read, he had given orders to his guards that if it looked like he was going to be captured, to kill him, because he wanted to, one, look like a martyr, and I guess in that same way not look embarrassed by being captured. So, from a practical aspect, if I was someone who was concerned with embarrassing him, which I think if you honestly, if the U.S. government was, serious in this sort of whole global terror and taking down Al Qaeda, I think making fun of them might help in some regard, since they take that kind of thing pretty serious. Of course, it could end up with more blowback, but capturing him would allow you to, in effect, like show how weak he is, which could be useful.
Yeah, my position is that it would have been better to capture him and try him, but considering the circumstances, it appears that it's acceptable. And that he ultimately faced. But once again, as the details come out, it's possible that it will be pretty. If it was pretty, they took video of the whole thing. If it's pretty clear cut that he was trying to surrender and they just shot him, that's different than if they opened the door and he was running and they fired.
Yeah.
So
and there's certainly a difference between being happy he's dead and just being indifferent or
True. I guess let me expand that. I don't think we should have raided the compound either.
Why is that?
I don't think you can take that kind of offensive action in the name of defense. I think, when it comes to defending yourself, you've got to defend when the action occurs. You can't say, this person is a threat and, go.
I think in a case where a guy has been both the figurehead and an actor and is actively on the run, obviously if he's on the run and you can't find him, in the generic sense, not necessarily in this sense with all the extraneous stuff, but if a guy's on the run, it's not like you can act immediately anyway. So in that regard, going after the person I don't think is an issue. Going into Pakistani airspace, while I'm not concerned about their national sovereignty, but sort of from their own rules of etiquette, was not cool. And the fact that they were flying underneath the radar, someone in Pakistan must have known, though, because there's a military base, just down the road.
Yeah.
So it seems odd that they were flying in under the radar, yet claimed that they were, and the AP article I read was like, Obama was really concerned about, infringing on the airspace and the sovereignty of Pakistan. Like, they do that every day with drone attacks. But besides that, aren't supposedly their American allies, and therefore if Bin Laden is there, they'd just be like, that dude's there, we're going to go in and we're going to do a strategic attack and take him out. They'd be like, all right.
Well,
what?
That's
someone
the thing.
must have known.
But
I think not everybody.
I think it's the idea that when they found this guy, that he is not only is he I forget I've heard different figures, but 2 miles was the farthest I've heard from the Pakistani military academy. Their equivalent of West Point. He was
sound like the radio now.
He was
Pakistani equivalent of West Point.
Well, I did hear that on the radio.
Oh, there you go.
But so he's there. It's not an isolated area. It's a residential neighborhood. He's in this giant compound. Now, this isn't like you have a farmhouse and the government doesn't like you, so it becomes a compound. This was legit compound. There's huge walls, barbed wire. They burned all their trash. They had no phone lines or anything going in.
They're living off the grid.
Exactly, living off the grid.
I imagine if you're Osama bin Laden, you sort of had to. Even relative to the standards of Pakistan.
I think that he was just so concerned about living sustainably, and that's why the U.S. government didn't like him.
I think they should have sent the ATF, who has the ATFE now, who has a long track record of knowing how to deal with off the grid compounds.
I think they should have sent the A-team. Because they would have just driven up in the van and like squealed to a stop.
The A-Team is such
Ryan loves that show.
such statist propaganda. Actually, I was working my way through all episodes of the A-Team to write an article to that effect, and I read another article written talking about how, oh yeah, they're the ultimate libertarian team, yada yada yada. It's like, no, they're really, really not. They are very, very pro-state.
They're pro-state, but they're pro-state but anti-government. Because they're opposed to the people who set them up. So they're opposed.
Yeah, they're fugitives.
They're opposed to the ruling government, but they're pro-state.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
I suppose Hitler was opposed to the ruling government at one point too.
Yeah.
That's
there
true.
you go. So I back to Bin Laden's compound.
By the way, before you get too far, we're taking some heat in the chat room that you should probably know about. We're getting criticized for our usage of, in my case, the inadvertent usage of the term "we." So when I say, we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have. Honestly, I didn't do squat. I wasn't over in Pakistan, but
but you're just another statist, Ryan.
apparently.
So you're talking.
Well, I am if I talk like that. So I really should amend my language.
Semantics are important.
There they are.
So
I can empathize.
so the compound. Now that we're empathizing with semantics, is it's pretty obvious that there's something going on there. And it's that close to the military institute. Even if let's just negate the whole issue of the Pakistani military should have known. The U.S. should have known. This, if you're talking about all these different ways that it took them to find Bin Laden, it's like, well, shouldn't you have people who know what's going on in Pakistan's military who might, question what this is? I think it's pretty clear that someone in the Pakistani military was sympathetic or empathized, perhaps, with Bin Laden, and that's probably why the U.S. was so secretive about it that they didn't want to tip them off. But that doesn't reflect well on the U.S. either. Like, why couldn't they have figured this out? And this is especially ridiculous when you have like articles insinuating that if it wasn't for Guantanamo and secret prisons and torture, they wouldn't have got this lead. It's like, well, they shouldn't have needed that lead because it's so obvious that there's something going on there.
Besides, if you actually look at how they got the information, it was like, okay, they tortured this guy and he didn't give them any good information. Then they just went through a list of people that he might have known, and eventually they got to someone. He's like, no, the guy's a nobody. Don't look in there. Don't look at him. And then they're like, maybe we should look at this guy. And apparently that's how they found out about his courier, because he was very like shifty about his name when it came up.
And it still took them a long time to find Bin Laden after that.
Well, these are big places. I don't like. I'm not critical in terms of like how long it may have taken them. I certainly believe that it could have been more efficiently done. I think like marks of reprisal, even like if you're going to go legally speaking, I think marks of reprisal, telling a bunch of hardcore bounty hunters or whatnot, like, here you go, here's like $1 billion, go at it. Which is what the idea is, right? I think that would have been more efficient. You would have competition in finding this guy, but
Dog totally would have sprayed bear mace in his face. We would have seen it on primetime television.
Maybe, I don't know, but I think that would.
For the record, bounty hunters can be some total jerks, too.
Oh, I think you have to be a bounty hunter.
I think you have to. I mean, they can be just outright thugs.
I'm pretty sure the SEALs aren't much better.
The SEALs work for thugs.
When you're talking about
thugs.
Competition, I think one thing that you have to be concerned about is communication. These agencies are competing. They're not necessarily going to share information that could be critical to putting together all the pieces, unless, of course, there's another agency that their whole purpose is to collect and analyze information.
That's
and
true.
They
also
contract
kind of
with
intelligence agency or something.
Something like that. There's no possible way that could exist without a state, of course.
But even though people might not be sharing information, the drive, the personal drive to get information in the first place would, I think, be greater.
Well, we'll see. So what else do we want to talk about with this whole
Bin
issue?
Laden, I'm sorry.
OBL,
Well,
OBL.
I think in terms of we could talk a little bit about what the impact's going to be. I think as far as the impact, you are going to see a hit to Al Qaeda as the organization, because I think
I don't know.
I think he had a lot of contacts and ways of funding. I think you'll see a hit there. I don't necessarily think you'll see a decline in terrorism as a tactic because of this, because I think other things will.
From what
spray
I've
up.
read, most of Al Qaeda, what few individuals that there are mostly individual cells or whatever the hell you want to call that aren't even directly like connectable to the original members, who are more like sympathetic, off branches of off branches from the readings that I've done. And if that's true, then I don't see how this is going to do anything but perhaps make them a little bit more motivated in that, they've got this pseudo martyr now.
Well,
But infrastructurally, like my cousin, who I think is in the Marines or the Navy or something, said something
like that.
I didn't even know he was joining. I would have argued against him not to if I knew otherwise. But he made a comment on Facebook saying that they're very organized. But Osama didn't even tell his second in command where he was, so there couldn't have been that much like top down control from him if his own like quote unquote generals didn't even know where he was.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Al Qaeda is not this top-down command structure like the U.S. military, for instance. That a lot of it relies on general affinity and cells that actually they don't. No, it's not a top-down.
So they're anarchists.
Cell structure.
They're anti-hierarchy anarchists.
No, I think there's hierarchy, but it's not organized.
I think
in
it's
the same way.
I think it's more like things are bad everywhere. Excuse me, and Al Qaeda has a big name because of what the U.S. did, and so it's more like this ragtag group is like, oh yeah, we're Al Qaeda sympathizers. They're our brothers. And that gets translated into English into something that's more directly linking than it actually is. And I think it's more like people joining on a bandwagon saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of whatever too," when it's not organized in that fashion. It's more of just like there's no way to validate otherwise, so they just claim an affiliation with these groups.
Yeah, and I think that the question to ask is, would Osama's death be more or less? Will it make him more able to rally people as a dead martyr, or than he was as a living person, or less able? And I think that's a question that has yet to be resolved. He was certainly a rallying personality, and the cult of personality is very important. But it's.
Wait, you're talking
we'll
about
see.
Ron Paul?
Ron Paul, Ron Paul, Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, president. Ron Paul, president.
Wait, what's his middle name?
I don't know.
Ein.
You don't know what Ron
Ron Ein
Paul's
Paul.
middle name is? God, you're a terrible libertarian.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of questions there. Let's get back a little bit to something I alluded to earlier. The whole way that the Taliban did offer to negotiate with President George Bush at the time, George W. Bush. And he said that no negotiations. We're just going to bomb you.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
So that brings us to the present day, where it's not always Al Qaeda that the U.S. is actually fighting in these occupations. There are a lot of other people who happen to be pissed about their neighborhoods being blown up, U.S. troops driving around killing people.
I don't understand why they're upset. I mean, really, we've brought them freedom and democracy.
It's the bloodthirsty Asiatic hordes, I tell you. They're also of a different religion.
They just don't get it.
Yeah,
If you're not Christian, white, and from America, then you just don't understand freedom.
There you go. And that's a quote you can attribute to Bile.
All bile on that one.
That I was quoting Bosco.
We're sticking to bile on that one. All bile, folks. Hate mail, bile at thinkingliberty.net.
That's fine. I'll just change the redirection so it all goes to you. It's
So-
amazing what you can do when you're the admin.
So, yeah, I mean, these military occupations, they didn't really have much to do with keeping America safe. I'm sure in the minds of a lot of politicians and supporters that expanding U.S. power is the way to secure American people because, they think that they should be in charge, and that's why they're politicians. And so that's why you have invasions. That's why you have U.S. power going into these places and just, trying to rearrange things. That's why you have a general distrust of these popular revolutions that are sweeping the area.
It's still, I don't know. It's kind of the whole idea. If you're going to accomplish anything, I mean anything at all, at gunpoint, unless you're changing people's minds and the way they think and the way people communicate, you're not going to get anything done. It's just going to blow back. It's just going to stink. I was having a discussion with a coworker today. He showed me this blog about a lesbian that she blogs, and she lives in Damascus. And it's about these guys come to her compound that she's in, compound once again. And her dad basically stands up for her, and he says, she may have said these things on the blog. That's fine. She's my daughter. And the guys are like, well, we'll show her what real men are like. And they basically threaten to rape her. And her dad says, is that really what you think real men are like? I mean, do you think people act this way? Would you like the whole town to know you act this way? So on and so forth, and stand up to him. And so, it was a really well-written post, and it was nice. And the coworker's like, see, this is why we need to bring freedom to these people, because they live in this kind of society where you have these armed thugs going around doing this. And I'm like, okay, where are you talking about? You're talking about Syria? It's like, all right, you do recognize that, in, 1949, they had a fledgling democracy, and it was toppled in a military coup that we supported with the CIA and with guns. So it seems like anything we choose to do using, anything thank you.
But we pay for it.
Thank you, Bosco, for fixing Bosco's language. Anything that they choose to do to try to affect a change always ends up just coming back and kicking you in the balls, even if it seems like the greatest thing ever.
And that's sort of assuming that its intentions are pure in the first place, which mostly it's not.
Well, more
Nowadays-
people will be free if we're in control of them because we're the best at
I don't even think
administering.
it's like that might be the public face of it, but even back then there wasn't a public face. The CIA
just did it.
And it was not for democracy or freedom. There was no PR part of it. It wasn't like today.
They wanted to maintain greater control.
Yes, period. Like the people that they wanted in control weren't in control, so they were going to fix that. And that's it. That's all it was. There was no like sugarcoating to it back then. Which I guess I appreciate to that degree, but then again it was all secret, so there was nothing to appreciate if you didn't know.
The quote that we need to bring freedom to these people. I mean, they seem to be bringing freedom, to themselves with protests, with what you mentioned, just standing up for people's rights, actions of solidarity, and it's a slow process, but it's not something that U.S. military power is going to accelerate. It might bring U.S. forms there, but I think that the U.S. has to look at its own backyard and where there are lapses in freedom and equality.
True, and I ultimately think that power does not grow out of the barrel of a gun, no matter what Mr. Mao said. It's really...
Some power does, and the lasting power doesn't, though.
I think ultimate power, because we, and when I say we, I mean as a species, human beings, have the capability, have the reasoning capability to say these things are worth our lives. So, I may look at something and say, okay, this is something that I am willing to lose my life over. And once you get to that point, then nobody has power over you. Nobody can hold a gun to your head and say, do this. You know,
They can kill you, though, and then you won't be exercising any power.
that's true, but I'll just be reincarnated as somebody even more badass. No. I mean, it's
like Iron Man Bin Laden.
I think there's really only so much you can do with a gun. I don't know. It really, really rubs me the wrong way to think that you can fix things with guns. You know, it's if I was to invest my time, I would look at building better, less centralized infrastructure for supporting communications. I think that would be one of the most effective ways to allow people to communicate and change the environment in which they live.
Or help bring about the singularity and
Yeah, you know,
scarcity
Either one.
and
yeah.
robots to do all our
Robots.
biddings.
But, yeah, and
Speaking of which, real quick, a tangent. Speaking of robots, and therefore sex robots, did you hear about the kissing machine, the internet kissing machine?
I saw it, but I didn't read it.
I didn't read the article either, but apparently it simulates kissing over the internet. With some
okay,
box.
where is Tennyson here? I think he needs to call in right
He's
about
using his
now.
internet kissing machine.
Maybe he should use it on
That
us.
is not a supported use of the kissing machine.
Calling Thinking Liberty is a supported use. We don't know what this machine actually is, but you can call us on it. That we know.
Oh boy! All right. So what else are we talking about?
What
today?
else are we talking about?
We have talked about Obama bin Biden for 45 minutes.
We could go on break
That's a good
and then
idea.
figure out what to talk about during the break.
That sounds.
I
good.
think a break would be good after all this talk. And before we go, just pointing guns at people and blowing up their towns is not going to make them favorable towards the message you're trying to share. So that's why you can't spread freedom through predator drones.
And I think we should talk about beer.
we're back on ThinkingLiberty.net, the Anarcho Bombast Podcast. The best.
You put the bomb in Obama.
Not quite.
Not quite.
I think he put it there.
Bombast Podcast.
I put the bomb in Bombast.
You put the bomb in the bomb ba bomb ba dom ba dom bomb ba bomb ba bomb ba dom ba dom
bomb Iran.
You remember that? What's that Neely Comics video with baby cakes?
Was it the one where they visit the father's house?
Yeah,
the
or they visit
grandfather's
my-
house.
Go crazy, burn your house down.
And he
You
said
got to see the video. It's like 2 minutes. We'll show it to you at the end. You probably won't think it's that funny, but when you watch it for the 70th time, it gets extra funny.
Which one was it? That was one of Baby Cake's diary entries.
Yes.
So it's on YouTube. Just look up Baby Cake's diary. I don't know. It's probably like 3 or 4 or something. It's like, he said that the worst thing about living here was that you could only kill yourself once.
It's pretty funny.
It's so good.
All right. Well, what do we want to talk about?
We want to talk about a bunch of things. Let's start with gardening.
Gardening. All right. So
Gar.
Gardening.
Plant some food. Plant some food. You have to do this all in chant form.
at least where we are, it's well past the frost date. If you're in the continental U.S., I think it's past the frost date for you too. But we've now's a good time if you want to garden this year. Now is a good time to be planting. So if you are looking at getting plants and then putting them in containers or putting them in the ground or anything like that, now is a good time to start.
Now's the time to do it. I actually just got a text from Tennyson. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what do you suggest for people who might want to get into gardening? What should they do? Like, what plant should they try to?
Well, determine what you like to eat, and try it. And remember, biodiversity is your friend, so try a bunch of different things. That way, if some crazy bug that you can't identify comes and eats all of one thing, chances are they might not like the other thing. Or if squirrels dig up your garlic, they probably won't, eat your pumpkins or whatever else you happen to grow. Actually, don't start with pumpkins, by the way. Some more advice. It's a ginormous vine. Like, it's seriously nuts how far pumpkins run before they grow.
Yeah, that's true. But they're fun and pretty.
Yeah.
All squashes generally.
If you got the space for it, yeah.
Yeah, I should start planting more in my window
That's fun.
table pots.
I put down a 2x8 bed today of corn. I put down a 2x8 bed of carrots.
Wow.
I'm thinking I'm going to do peas, beans, and maybe try onions from seed. I haven't had much luck with that in the past. And they take like 140 days till they actually come to fruition. So it'd be like September-ish when I'm pulling them out.
Yeah, I think I always used bulbs when I did onions years ago.
Yeah. I mean, if you're interested in growing stuff, you can get the seed packets. If you look on the back of the seed packet, it'll tell you how much sun it needs, how long it takes to germinate. That's, when it actually opens up and basically comes out of the ground. You see your first green, and then how long it takes to actually develop fruit. So you can keep track of all that stuff. It's not that hard. It's really cheap.
Like seed packets have instructions on them. They're
And
imagine that.
And if I guess it depends on where you go, but I know my dad used to sell at his hardware and feed store seeds, at this time, and you always had seeds left over from last year, and usually 99 out of 100 times they're perfectly fine, and you can buy them cheaper than you like. Sometimes depending on the things that you buy, the seeds can be not expensive, but when you're getting everything together, it's another $5 worth of seeds or something, and you can get last year's seeds, which are usually perfectly fine for 20 cents.
Yep. You can go, I go to the dollar store, and they do actually exactly 20 cents. They'll do 5 seed packets for $1.
There you go.
And I've had dollar store seeds that I've held on to now for 2 years, and I'd still get like an 80% germination rate just using a wet paper towel. So, I mean, they still work as long as you keep them cool and dry. You're in pretty good shape as far as your seeds are concerned. But more importantly, since you grow stuff in a windowsill, Darian, why should people grow stuff?
Well, it's interesting. You are closer to your food supply. I think the main thing, it just keeps you kind of in perspective. That this is where food comes from. This is what it does. It keeps you a little bit in touch, and if you're gonna someday have a bigger garden, which I would hope to do, starting small and just doing basic stuff, it gets you in practice for that. So it's really cool when you can just take a basil leaf and just take parsley that's growing in a pot and just use that. It's really awesome when you have fresh tomatoes growing out of a pot. I suggest the smaller tomatoes. They seem to yield more out of a pot than the large tomatoes. It's just great. You have fresh food, and it keeps things in better perspective. And from the point of view of counter power, building up power that's counter to the current powers that be, the authorities, food is very, very important. Food security is key, and it can really, if you scale it up, be the basis of a local alternate economy.
There you go. And I think gardens are really community building, too. At least they have been in the urban area where I live in. People comment on it. People walk by. You can give food to your neighbors. You can talk to your neighbors about it. Help my one neighbor plant a garden. Granted, she wanted all decorative stuff, but, that's still a start, in my opinion. So it can help you reach out to people, can help you realize that you don't need large institutions to meet some of your needs. And as you get into it a little bit more, I got into canning last year, so I'm still eating the fruits of my labor from last year. I had some rice today that I cooked in this this tomato sauce that I made.
You evil
last year.
capitalist.
What, eating rice?
No. Saving things and consuming
Saving
them
things? Building up my capital?
to consume later.
I'm totally going to put like a down payment on some land I buy in New Hampshire eventually, just all in canned goods. And be like, and how many cans of tomato sauce would that be? Oh no, this has extra garlic. Let's take that into account.
I don't know what the market value for that is, but I suspect it'll be hard to find a buyer.
You know what's interesting? When I
It's
made
not
that,
quite as fungible as...
it's true. It keeps well though. When I made that tomato sauce, it was pretty bad. I think Zach has had some. He unfortunately won it as a result of participating in some contest.
That'll encourage more participants.
So I sent him some of the fresh tomato sauce. I'm like, oh wow, this stuff's crap. I had some myself, and most recently I had some, and it's like, yeah, it gets better with age. And I'm like, it can't get that much better. I burnt the tomatoes when I made it. Like, how could you make burnt taste any better? And it actually does legitimately taste better. Like, it's kind of mellowed out, and it's not quite as pungent as it used to be.
Interesting. So, what do you think about the final nutritive value of the things you're planting? Does that figure into it, or is it just what you like to grow and eat? Do you think okay, this plant has these vitamins, this has these nutrients, I should try to grow that?
A little bit more now that I've been talking to my friend Josh more and more about, what's in the ground and what kind of, what you can expect to get out of the different things. But mostly I'm, okay, what do I know grows well? What do I know I can grow in here based on the crop rotation I try to maintain? And what do I personally think is delicious? So that's what I try to stick to. There's some things that growing it is definitely worth it, and there's other things that honestly growing them where I live right next to a farmer's market doesn't make a lot of sense. Like I can go and I can buy second-rate fruits and vegetables that they wouldn't normally sell and use them for canning. So I can get a bag that has, that's full of a grocery bag full of ears of corn for $2, $1.50 if I haggle with the person. And, they've all got worms in them, but I can cut them out, flick the worms out, and I can still can it. So when it comes down to canning stuff, there's some things that it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to necessarily grow. So I try to stick to weird things or fun things. Like the corn I'm growing this year is this weird heirloom variety that's red. I bet you it tastes just like normal corn and probably grows pretty much the same, but it'll be red.
Tastes like commies.
It tastes like communism.
When are you going to start growing mushrooms in your basement?
Mushrooms would be exciting. Probably not for a while.
Turn your basement into a mushroom farm. I think that would hurt the resale value, which
Probably a little
already has been hurt due to the recession. So
that resale value's tanked. That
Might
house
as well
is a
just
ball
go
and
all
chain.
the way. Just grow mushrooms in every wall. Just seed all your walls with mushrooms, so you can I don't know. Who lives in giant mushrooms? There's got to be some cartoon that they do that.
Hobbits?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
They live underground.
I don't know. There's like a Sonic the Hedgehog game where there's a mushroom forest that you like bounce on. I guess they aren't.
Mario's always eating mushrooms and
Yeah.
freaking out and killing people and stuff. You know.
Not people, just other mushrooms and walking mushrooms with eyes.
And Goombas.
Yeah, that's those.
Oh, okay.
And then
I always thought the Goombas, that was just slang for Italians, and it was really a game about, Japanese people conquering Italians through control of Italian plumbers.
that's I guess that could be it.
I think you should write a 5,000 word essay on this very topic. And use
Japanese
lots
Italian
of,
imperialism through
There you
video
go.
games.
yes, make a really long title. Use a lot of long sentences. Say hegemony a lot.
It'll get you on Kotaku.
That's true. Somebody will read it.
Hegemonic.
Somebody will read it for no other reason than to be like, this is the worst crap ever. I can't believe I read this.
No, you would have comments. I think this guy has a really good point.
And then Wikipedia will have it. It'll be like
A source.
and Mario Brothers like controversy.
It'll get a whole section. The controversy. See this.
I always liked on Wikipedia when you would open up an article and there would be very little of like main content, and then it's just like controversy of X or X topic or X person.
Gee, I wonder why they made that page.
That's always what people want to jump to anyway. All right, so while we're talking about doing stuff yourself, I have a conundrum that I think you might be able to
conundrum?
help me with. A
Conundrum.
Woohoo! All right, and this is going to sound like a shameless plug for Fix Brewing, which I guess it kind of is.
Fix Brewing.
But
Fix Brewing.
Anyway, if you look at Zach Fix's beer page, if you go to the Fix Brewing thing, there's
Where's that? What's the URL?
it's on Facebook under Fix Brewing.
All right.
So
I don't get to chant URL.
you could chant URL. Go ahead. Oh, wait.
URL. URL.
So here is my conundrum. So there's the beer and gas fund thing on there, right? And there's these different levels that you can purchase different beer packages and stuff like that in. And one of them, which obviously is the most appealing, me being a fan of Chinese food buffets and other places like that, is the all you can possibly drink option, which I think sounds awesome. So I'm thinking about the all you can drink option, and I was saying on there before, I think there should be some sort of mark or symbol that you care so much about alcohol that you purchased an all you can drink option. And what I recommended was like a trucker hat that maybe has like a skew beer label on it. But I'm thinking trucker hats tend to fall off if you don't strap them on, especially when you're abysmally drunk, like the kind of drunk that comes when you purchase an all you can drink option for multiple days. So what I was thinking was it might be you get a t-shirt with it too. And just having the vomit encrusted t-shirt that you slept on the ground multiple days with, that might be enough of a mark that you've purchased the option. So I don't know. I wanted you guys to weigh in. What do you think the pros and cons of an all you can drink beer purchase are?
Well,
I guess the con is that you got to drink beer. I mean, to get your money's worth.
Yeah, neither one of you guys drink beer.
And
Yeah,
I
might
don't
be
like
asking the wrong
beer,
people.
so yeah.
Huh.
But if it was like all you could drink root beer, I mean, I can empathize with that.
it's like, you have to balance out your drunkenness with your soberness to make sure you get the full experience,
You could be so drunk you forget to drink. That could happen.
Yeah. Or you could just stay if you're good at like at pacing, you could just be lightly or heavily buzzed the entire time.
It could work. I mean, I've got other questions concerning it too. Like, do the keg taps stay in? So, like, will the kegs be tapped in the morning? Because I like to get up nice and early. That might be a good time to have a beer.
That's how
Well,
you know
is
you're
this supposed to be during Porkfest?
Yeah, this is
Well,
pork.
if this is Porkfest, why would the never ever not be tapped? I mean, I'm pretty sure like Osborne, his is tapped 24/7.
like that should be tapped before they set up their tent, basically.
I'm pretty sure
That's
with
the important
Osborne
thing.
it is. I mean,
Okay.
they just drive up with a tapped keg and it's, here you go.
Oh, all right.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess the T-shirt with puke on it might make it a little harder to meet some people. They might be disturbed by the smell and avoid you.
It's a libertarian thing. We're all antisocial to begin with, right?
Yes.
Isn't that how it
That's
goes?
the rules.
If somebody comes up, if somebody looks the other way at my vomit-stained shirt, I'll be like, "Screw you for judging me! You don't control me."
Why are you trying to coerce me by telling me that I smell? Well, while we're on this, there's actually a Crime Think essay like against hygiene. It's pretty
Okay,
funny.
good to know.
That reminds me of the joke. Hey, have you heard a good anarchist joke? Yeah, Crime Think.
Oh,
Zing.
nice. So anyway, Fix Brewing, Porkfest. I'm considering it.
You're considering
And the
it.
Fun Tent. I think they're working together.
They're working together.
I'm expecting that the Fixes will have quite a good selection too.
Well, you get
So
the
that's-
cool thing is you get like one of each beer too with this particular package. So I don't know. It's a pretty awesome package.
All right.
The problem is, the girlfriend who's going to be there like all week, she doesn't drink beer either. So it's not even like I could, have her drink for me before I get there.
Substitute drinking. Well, I mean, this way, if you forget your spoon or something, you don't have to carve one out. You can just subsist on beer the whole weekend.
That's true. It's like liquid bread. It'll keep you going.
There you go. There's actually Zach shared a link on our wall a little bit. It was an article about
How it hydrates you better than water
But see, it's
from one study.
from one study, but it's also one drink they studied. So it's like basically after these people did some aerobic exercise in heat where they're sweating for a sustained period of time, that drinking like 500 milliliters or something of beer made them help them they absorbed more water than someone who drank 500 milliliters of water. Same principle as like Gatorade, that your body needs electrolytes and things like that, and beer also
Gatorade is chemically similar to sweat.
and beer it also has other nutrients in it that your body is using to recover. So drinking one beer or one Gatorade or one milk after a heavy workout might be a good plan. So
Good to know. All right.
also electrolytes.
Brondo.
Tower
10,000 babies.
Kenyans.
All right. So beer, important. Giving
All
it
right.
some thought. You should too.
All right. Before we get into more beer topics, we had
There's more beer topics?
Yes. Oh, there is. We had a text message from Tennyson, and he says, "Should they have gotten rid of UBL's body at sea?"
Oh, that's what he wants to know. What do we think?
I think that most people would have rather seen the body.
Well, the thing is,
But-
he was shot in the head, so
Well-
it's like,
Besides, you don't know how much damage was done. However, I think people would still prefer to see the body just to, for a certain amount of comfort
Closure and-
closure and stuff. But I understand also that if they didn't do that, the possible outrage from the Muslim community for not giving him a proper Muslim burial during the time frame that they're supposed to have would have looked really bad too.
Yeah.
So
Well-
I think they were in a tough spot in that regard.
yeah, I mean, there are a number of issues there. I mean, the whole, they don't want to make this into any more of a war on Islam than it already is. They want to make it so, they're going to respect religion, give someone a proper burial. Unfortunately, burying someone at sea isn't, within strict Muslim guidelines unless, they died at sea and they can't get them to ground, according to a lot of scholars. Yeah, it is good that they did to the best of their ability, followed the ritual for, a proper burial. And I think that's, that sends a good message that, we're not going to try to use this as an insult to rub it in people's faces. And I think that's partly why they don't want to release photos. And I mean, part of that is also that they're the government and, they like to make people disappear and they like to control information. And we should, why would we question anything that they've said? They are the government.
They'll
I think
release
it
the
would have been-
information when they feel like it.
Yeah, I think it would have been good to have an independent source look at the body. Someone from I guess journalists or something like that.
There was
but
actually-
not take I can see why they would be sensitive about releasing photos.
There was a good point, and I haven't looked into this in detail, but I guess Ron Paul was on NPR today.
Yeah, that's what Kristen said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess he brought up the question just sort of in passing, but he's like, they claim to have DNA evidence from his like couple-year-old dead sister, and that's how they identified the body, or one of the ways in which they identified the body. It's like, but the timeline between like killing him and in his burial doesn't, and the when they made the announcement didn't seem sufficient to do that test, especially given the circumstances, like where they were and where like stuff may have been even on a battleship or whatnot. So that's interesting too, whether or not they actually had confirmed it by the time they had announced it.
Well, I mean, they announced it on Monday, so that was after he'd been dead for a while. Maybe they didn't even kill him on Sunday. They had him, dead for a while. That's another possibility.
Why does this crap always happen? Why don't they have like the government bureau of not causing conspiracy theories?
Well, that's
a conspiracy.
That was
obviously.
Paul brought up that too. He's like, I don't understand why the government does all these things that are just waiting to be like called out as conspiracy theories. It's like, certainly there are conspiracies within the government. There's, I think he brought up the Gulf of Tonkin or something like that. But he goes, there are other things that seem, because the host, I think, asked him if he thought it was conspiratorial, certain things, and he goes, I don't think so. Things seem reasonable enough, but the government is or the administration is just inviting people to be conspiratorial because they're hiding information that doesn't seem to have any relevance to be hidden, any reason to be hidden. So that's a question that others have too.
Two very important things. One, he was apparently on the Diane Rehm show. I do a fantastic Diane Rehm impression. I'm Diane Rehm. And two,
I think you're talking too quick.
I'm talking too quick?
Yeah,
All
I
right,
think-
sorry, I'll slow it down. This is my impression of Diane Rehm. I'm Diane Rehm. And two, Riel's in the chat room apparently found a leprechaun, and I believe him. Just throwing that out there.
Did he implore you to bring the gold?
You bring the gold or I'll bring the pain. Did you see that the South Park where he finds the leprechaun? I believe it's Imagination Land.
Imagination Land.
Yeah. I saw that for the first time the other day. Speaking of South Park, have you guys seen the first episode of season 15, the Human
not.
Centipad?
No, I have not.
You have to watch the Human Centipad. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's how Apple creates a human centipede connected with an iPhone and an iPad to create the ultimate iPad called the Human Centipad. and it's got like what's his face, Kyle, as the middle piece, and it's all about the whole shtick, I guess, is that Steve Jobs keeps complaining, why won't this thing read? And Kyle just like clicks OK on the EULA. He's like, why won't this thing read? It just like signs its name away. Why doesn't it read? Like, I want the human centipad to read and to be able to talk and read, or whatever he says. And he's like, why won't it read? And he's just freaking out. So that was like one of the story arcs. It's pretty good. Lori went to Chiller this weekend, and the Japanese guy who's the front of the centipede in the movie
Right.
was there. And they had, you pay your $20 or whatever to get an autograph, and they have a bunch of like glossies to you pick one to sign. She picked the one of the Human Centipad from the show that they actually put there. That was pretty smart because the episode was just out like last week, and so they had a stack of these, and she got him to sign it, and he was talking about how, because the movie's like, this small budget movie is like very appreciative, not like was it that one woman, she plays like in like Nightmare on Elm Street 5. She's like the girl that has asthma.
Yeah.
She's like so stuck up about the fact that she was in one horror movie that was crappy, And then, so, you have that contrasted with these guys who are honestly like appreciative of what's going on. And speaking of which, you had a reunion of all the kids from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory were there too. So she got the autograph of the woman that played
Veruca Salt.
Veruca Salt.
Now,
And
what do you have to eat in the chocolate factory to get turned into a human centipede?
Everything.
Yeah, that's like after the movie is done and Charlie's running it, and things just go downhill from there. It's sort of like
You hit the wrong switch on the Wonka Vader to go to that room. That's what happened.
But who else was there? Oh, Nevik Ogre from Skinny Puppy was there too, because he did this like horror rock opera called Repo, and Laurie didn't know anything about Skinny Puppy, but liked that movie, so she goes over to him. No one else is around him, and he goes, I've been to a couple of these things, and there's always that one guy that's all by himself that no one knows. This time, it's me. And he's like, for the industrial scene, he's like,
pretty well
he is a
known, yeah.
grandfather of industrial music and like, and that genre. And Laurie said, "There's no one there. Like, no one's paying attention to him except for like his handler."
Did Laurie tell him that Marilyn Manson stole his stage act?
I don't think so, but
She should have.
she said he was fun to talk to.
Well, I think the important thing here is what kind of threat is Imagination Land now facing from the terrorists?
All kinds of threats.
Oh man, like Imagination Land. It got really torn up, didn't it?
It was pretty brutal.
That was a good South Park. The Imagination Land, was it a
It was a
three-parter?
trilogy.
The Imagination Land trilogy.
It's on Netflix.
It's also on southparkstudios.com. And I think it's actually like a movie. Like they put all the parts together and called it a movie.
It's all of it together, but it's like broken up into 3 chunks when you watch it as a movie.
It was pretty funny. I still think there are probably other trilogies or 3-parters that are probably better in the whole of South Park. But it was pretty
South
good.
Park's been on for a while, hasn't it?
15 seasons.
They keep trying to get out, but it
Well,
doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I don't know if they're actually trying anymore.
They have to make a season that's so terrible that
Well, they do.
They
they will
tried-
become
they
the
did.
Simpsons.
They just ask for more money, and it's like, okay.
Well, after doing Team America, which a lot of the past couple days have been compared to, they said they were like totally burned out, for making movies, because that was just so tedious that I think the ease at which they can do South Park, they just roll with it. It's like,
Fair enough.
they give us millions of dollars to write a show. Like it takes a day to write the show, 3 days to produce and manufacture it. We can do the entire series or the entire season in like 2 weeks. It's like, all right, you're going to give us tens of millions of dollars? Sure, why not?
Done.
There you go.
Cool. What else we got on that list?
What else we got? Well, let's talk about these alcoholic centers.
This is a good
This is
story.
an interesting article. I think it was in The Guardian. It was about, I forget exactly, wasn't it in Minnesota? They
said there was some in Canada and there was one in one state. I forget what it
Okay,
was.
so basically what these centers are, they're for alcoholics to go to, basically to have a safe place to drink. They don't have to go to any type of meetings. They don't have to go to rehab while they're there. I presume that those options are available to them, but they don't have to do anything to be there. I presume they screen these people to make sure that it's not someone just trying to get free booze. But it says that it reduced crime and hospital costs and
Keeps them from getting robbed
yeah.
and taken advantage of. And
So it's interesting. I don't know quite how I feel about this. The fact that that the state is setting up centers for people to drink themselves to death, I think it doesn't reflect well on society. I think that this is even necessary. But I mean, I guess I don't know the extent to which alcohol. Some people get dependent on it, and then they, I guess it's better that there is a center for them rather than them being a bigger burden on their family or something like that. But it's just a little weird to me, this whole idea. Let's even with or without the tax funded angle, which adds a different layer of it. Is this a good thing?
Let's say it was a private group doing it. Somebody had an alcoholic uncle, and they said, okay, this kind of place should be established. In that respect, I wouldn't really have much of a problem with it, because it's what they choose to do. And a lot of the people who are alcoholics, I mean, when you talk to them when they're sober, when you talk to them when they're drunk, either one, they say they want to continue taking that particular action. They want to continue doing that thing. And I think, they have, you would be, what's the word I'm looking for? You'd be violating basically the NAP if you didn't allow them to do what they wanted to do, so long as they weren't harming anybody else.
Right. I mean, as long as this is funded by, voluntarily, then, it's not violating anyone's rights. But I mean, to me, it just seems like, and certainly they have the freedom to do this, but it's like, should this be encouraged? Is this really the best way to do it? Like, how much should you encourage them to have some kind of treatment? What's...
Well, I mean, the other option is a lot of times they die or they get stabbed in an alley, or they have violent confrontations with police officers, or, there's all these sorts of terrible things that happen, and yet some people continue drinking, even when that happens.
I guess I would really need to learn a little bit more about these centers. Like, maybe, I guess more than a brief one-page news report. See, like, what is the effect of these people? Like, do people who go here, do they, I guess, examine what they're, is it a safe space for self-reflection that maybe helps them, if not completely overcome alcoholism, at least deal with it and be, a better person? Or is it...
It didn't, I mean, somebody comments in the chat room, alcoholism is not worthy of endorsement. It didn't strike me from the article as if they're endorsing it as much as they are providing a safe space where this action can occur.
It seemed like it was also a last resort kind of place. Like but then it's like, how much is this going to substitute for programs that help people overcome alcoholism? Like, is that going to displace its market
I think
position?
those programs will be there, but you can't. Programs like that don't work unless you get buy-in from the individual. So until the person decides that they want help, there's really not much of anything you can do other than try to provide a situation where they don't get beat up and stabbed and robbed and all the awful things that happen when you stumble around town drunk.
Here's a question: if somebody is basically their alcoholism is connected to actual criminal behavior. They harm people. Maybe they're violent or something, and that's pretty conclusively linked to an alcohol problem. What is the proper thing to do? I guess it depends on the individual, but would it be right then to, as a condition of their restitution or their, I guess that wouldn't even be restitution, but as a condition to, I guess, make them fit for society, to force them into some kind of rehabilitation program? I'm not really sure.
Your pressures beyond restitution in a legitimate rights preserving way of doing things, I'd say your pressures have to be basically all social. So if they meet the burden of restitution, beyond that, there's nothing you can really do other than exert, social pressures on people. Which oftentimes we say there's nothing you can do other than go to these social pressures. I think you also got to recognize that social pressure is huge. Like, having society or a group of individuals pressure someone to do something is a massive, massive, massive thing, especially under certain constructs.
Not to be taken lightly.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you say basically, okay, we're not going to associate with this person, or we're not going to sell this person alcohol, that can be very tough for that particular person.
It's a good point brought up by Zach in the chat room. It's like a needle exchange. These people are doing something that is harmful, but it's good to mitigate the harm that it does. So,
I think so. It's tough. When you get into these issues, when you're dealing with mental illness and people with diseases and things like that, it becomes particularly tough to preserve the rights of the individual. But I mean, ultimately, you got to try to preserve their rights, even if they choose to make decisions that you would never make yourself, or decisions that you think are very, very harmful to them.
Yeah, so of course there are a lot of different threats here. The threat of forcing someone, the threat of promoting, of whether this promotes or does not promote certain behaviors, and the threat of funding for these things. So I think it's interesting. It's something that I would like to perhaps read more about. But I guess it could be a positive thing overall. I guess really as long as it's not taken lightly is a thing. If it's like, oh, you ended up in the drunk house, oh yeah, whatever. If it's like, that's a really, you don't want to be there kind of thing, not because it's, terrible and dangerous, but because, you should have a, better sense of self-worth, that, you don't go down that road. But then you can't stigmatize it too much, or it becomes, people will do more harmful things than going to this place. So I think it's a little, tricky of an issue.
Well, I think you can stigmatize the drunk house where somebody does not seek treatment, and then you can have less of a stigma on somebody actually going into rehab or something like that to try to get themselves fixed. Because, I mean, currently as we have now, there's a stigma attached to rehabilitation. If you say, if I say, oh, I can't do the radio show for 6 months, I'm going into rehab, you guys would probably be like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. I mean, there's a definite stigma.
Yeah, there is. Which, I can understand, being that somebody who needs to go that far has obviously made some bad choices, but it's like, all right, well, they're probably making a good choice here now. Like, you don't have to stigmatize someone forever for bad choices they made. You should try to encourage them to make good choices. And, rehabilitation can be a good choice. And I think especially once the element of coercion is taken out of it. I mean, when someone is forced to go to rehab, especially if they don't really have a drug problem, they just use certain drugs that are not approved, I think that really gives it an extra stigma, because it's criminal. The person doesn't really want to do it, and sometimes there are legitimate reasons. So that kind of muddies the waters for someone who legitimately will be better off with treatment versus someone who is being treated by, a prison society of, psycho prisons, that you're doing the wrong thing. There is something wrong with you.
You're taking the wrong drug. We'll give you the right one.
We must cure you. You are sick. There's a lot of
there's a definite creepiness factor to that,
issues there,
and awfulness factor to that. All right, but yeah, a interesting topic. What was the houses were called? Wet houses, I believe.
I believe so.
Do you know? You said it was in the Guardian.
The Guardian. Yeah, I actually saw it from reading the blog of one of our previous guests, Mel from Broadsnark.
Oh, cool.
Broadsnark.com, the blog. A lot of interesting links and topics and opinions and arguments being given there. So you should check that out. So I guess why don't we move on a bit here? So it was May Day recently.
Yes.
The original
May
Labor
1st.
Day. This was, I guess, May 1st, 1886 was the day when labor unions...
Looked the date up before the show.
when labor unions were... they basically declared that they would work an 8-hour day, and there were a lot of strikes to try to make this a reality, to try to make this, give workers a stronger bargaining position.
Yeah, they set a date for it. They were like, okay, by
it's May 1st.
May 1st of what year? Because they set it like 2 years in advance.
Well, 1886 was the deadline. I guess it
was the deadline. Yeah, so they'd been striking since 1884, off and on, and
And then on May 1st, 1886, there were a large number of strikes. And then
We're
So-
talking, when we say large, we're talking like they had protests and stuff around that had, 80,000 people in the streets of Chicago and stuff like that. So that's pretty large.
Right, Chicago was the center of this. A lot of anarchists were involved, and there's certainly going to be a little violence, but a lot of the strike leaders were trying to keep things as peaceful as possible. And then one of the strikes, I believe on May 3rd, was broken up violently. So on May 4th, they're having a rally to speak against this, and the speakers encouraged people to be peaceful about it.
Even what's his name? Spies said that Spies, there you go. Said that he wouldn't speak. They published a pamphlet, a flyer for it, and it said, come fight for your rights, come armed. And he refused to speak as long as they were distributing that particular flyer. So they changed that. They only distributed like 200 of the original flyer. They distributed a whole lot more of the secondary flyer in order for him to speak. So there was a big emphasis on trying to keep it peaceful at this particular rally.
So they're speaking on May 4th, and I mean the mayor had stopped by and saw that there was no trouble going on. But as the rally was winding down, I believe it had started to rain a little bit. The Chicago police moved in on it and was trying to disperse people in an aggressive manner. A bomb was thrown. It's not sure by whom.
Pipe bomb.
And a police officer lost his life. Some others were injured, and the police started shooting into the crowd. Some people fired back. So a major mess.
Cops shot each other a lot.
Yes, a lot of cops shot each other. So a major mess, and then basically 8 organizers were put on trial because they were anarchists. One of whom was actually speaking at the time, so he couldn't have thrown the bomb.
The prosecution even said that they didn't have anybody on there who'd actually thrown the bomb.
Yeah, some of them, weren't even at the rally. They were being tried because their ideology was an accessory to
damn bomb throwing anarchists.
To what happened, and eventually, I believe 4 of them were hanged. One killed himself in prison before he was executed, and of the other 3, I forget exactly what happened.
One of them got 15 years, and I think 2 of them got pardoned later.
Yeah, there were 2 pardons, and then did the 15-year-one serve his full sentence? Do you recall?
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, but yeah, so basically after that, May 1st became a major day for labor. And like with most other things, state communists stole it and made that a day to glorify their state. So May Day got a bad reputation that way. But especially after the fall of the Soviet Union kind of broke their monopoly on a large sector of history, it started being used as more as a labor holiday and also as a day to protest for free movement of people across borders. So, important day in history.
It's important to know about the Haymarket Affair and what happened and what the fallout was. You can see Utah Phillips a while ago gave a nice little spiel about the Haymarket martyrs. Talked a little bit about that, and it's an early anarchist thing that I think is definitely worth knowing about. Also, if you look at the guy's name escapes me, but one of the people that was hanged gave a pretty stirring statement when he was being hanged, where he used the phrase "subterranean fire" to talk about what was going on. And basically, the gist of what he was saying is like, "You can hang me." He's like, "You will change nothing." He's like, "We've set a subterranean fire, and you can't put it out."
Yeah, there were, I think, more than one good speech. One of them says that
only one.
there will be a time when our silence is louder than the voices you strangle today. I'm probably butchering it, but it's on the monument. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a. What kills me about it though is there's these people who spoke so eloquently, and when you look into them, I mean, they were the big movers and shakers in anarchism at the time that were hanged. They really just took this group of 7 people that they sentenced to death, and they were like, all right, you are the most important, most influential, or somehow connected, and we're going to hang you.
So that's how the state ensures domestic tranquility.
Yes, by hanging, which we have a long history of. Like I mentioned before about my favorite dude, Georgie Washington. You can look into how many people post-Revolutionary War were hanged in squares and greens all over the U.S.
Lovely.
And you don't accomplish much by killing people. I think I've brought that up before, in my humble opinion. If you disagree with me, though, I'm not going to kill you over it.
Okay. That's good to know. So why don't we move on? Bile, you brought up an interesting intellectual property story earlier.
Yeah, this I think was also from Ars Technica, as many of the good stories I find are.
My stories.
My stars. Apparently, this one comes. I think it was from WikiLeaks. It was. It indicated that, like in 2005, the American embassy in New Zealand propositioned, I guess, the executive branch, probably, or maybe the some lobbyists or something in the executive or the legislative, to allocate funds to give to New Zealand so that it could fight against piracy and enforce intellectual property.
I mean, things like pirating software, not actual piracy.
Yes.
Arr.
Arg.
Not like the Somali Coast Guard?
No,
Not-
no.
Not like them, not like Eric Cartman and his lightsaber. That was a fantastic episode.
Yes, that was a good one.
South Park.
Especially
pirate
the
one.
ending when they just shot the guy in the head. And that was it. And the kids are just like, It was very abrupt. But in any case, so yeah, they were looking to give American taxpayer money or borrowed money or whatever, printed money, and give it to the New Zealand government so it could pay people to enforce basically American intellectual property monopoly laws on the New Zealand's.
So
Nice.
they were going to pay, like, I guess, nominally private agencies to do this.
That's what I gathered. I'd have to reread the
Yeah.
article because I just kind of skimmed the intro, but yeah, that's what it seemed like.
Because, I mean, that's it's... If so, that'll be an interesting example of how, states and, I don't want to call it private power because it's not, their main customer is the state, but how they use nominally non-state entities sometimes to do their dirty work. And so they can sometimes get around rules and do things kind of on the side that way. But I think it's a mistake to overemphasize the bad influence of, I guess, outsourcing government functions or the bad effects of it, because government can do a lot of bad without outsourcing things. It's just a matter of what works for them in certain situations. So I wouldn't say that.
The free market in oppression is more efficient than the hierarchical government.
Yeah,
one size
I think
fits all
nowadays the
market.
government tends to choose the outsourcing their evil approach because it's very easy to annex. Then you can be like, oh, I don't know what's up. Those guys from Z Corporation are just screwed up. I mean, they just chose to do that, and it's like, wait, you paid them
Well, I
and
think-
told them what to do, and we're happy with the results until they got caught.
Well, also, I think you've just got a scenario that's slightly different. Like within the government, like directly within the government bureaucracy, you have these bureaucrats who are tied in with, like, the bennies that they get and all that kind of stuff. And the incentive structure within the government hierarchy, from the workforce perspective, does not breed, ambition. Where I think if you've got an organization that's outside that just sees this money source from their perspective, they've just got a client. And unless they're like, one of the large firms that does most of its business only with the government, these people are still trying to optimize profit. But they're, they've got different incentives. So they're probably more ambitious in terms of the goals and getting things done. They're probably more efficient. So in that regard, it's sort of the worst of both worlds.
Yeah,
True.
Zach Fix has a good point here, or sarcastically, I think we need to privatize profits and publicize risk. And that's I think Sheldon Richman had a very good commentary in the Freeman about this, about how when they say privatization, a lot of times what's being privatized are profits, but the risk or the loss or the funding is socialized or publicized.
Right.
So that's obviously not going to be the most just outcome. But also,
warped. I said it's definitely pretty warped. I think what kills it even more is that's to many people that's the free market. So when you say free market, they're like, oh yeah, well we tried that already, and this stuff happens, and it's like no,
Well, it's in economics. It's the externalities. So you've taken away the ability for the actors involved to reap the consequences of the actions they make, and like I said, in economics, this is the externality. So if you have a scenario like with, again, this isn't in at least in a private property free market. This is not legitimate, but the externality of pollution. So being able to, by ignoring property rights, you can pollute the air, and therefore you do not face the hardships of dealing with that fact that you are polluting other people. And the government historically looked the other way and allowed that to occur, and those externalities socialize the risk and the costs and privatize the gain. So it's in effect the same issue.
and of course, when people say free market, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to think of it. There is the market as everyone who interacts in an economic arena being free, or there is the market as something that's kind of external and nebulous and kind of has a mind of its own. And if the market is free to do what it wants with us, then we're at its mercy. So there's a lot of different things that people say when they use the word free market, and unfortunately, a lot of times they don't stop to think about what it is they're saying. Is the market all of us? Is the market an arena of power relations? Is the market something external to our day to day? These usages get muddled.
definitely.
But another interesting thing about that article is just the way that U.S. government policy is going to support the intellectual property regime. And this is something that Kevin Carson writes about a lot, how the intellectual property regime is an example of imperialism, of hegemony, U.S. hegemony being spread overseas, and basically to create an economy that functions for the benefit of major companies, especially those based in the West. There's a large section of studies in mutualist political economy where he goes over this, and it's a recurring theme in a lot of his articles at Center for a Stateless Society.
Good to know.
So there was one of those that you liked actually recently that
his we were talking about this before. His last article that he wrote, which was talking about basically different ages of production. I liked it because it talked about agriculture and when we went agrarian versus hunter-gatherer and what that meant as far as our ability to build up surplus, our ability to basically increase the free time we have, and where we're currently going with technology as things are getting more and more to the spot where we can create our own items, we can create our own things, and we're kind of taking power from what used to require a whole industrialized society, or a whole industrialized sector, I guess you could say. A lot of that is going into your living room, and you can create these things, and we can exchange information faster than we've ever been able to exchange information before, which is important too. So he talks about, things like WikiLeaks and stuff like that, and basically how it's the tip of the iceberg.
And also, he mentioned the desktop computer and computer-aided CNC tools, I guess. I guess he doesn't use this phrase, but democratizing production, making the means of production more easily reachable. So that's good. I like the article you're talking about. I don't quite remember the title of it. Perhaps
There's something about like going from childhood to maturity, or
like Childhood Zen for Humanity or something.
Yeah,
I don't know,
sounds
Bile,
good.
if you want to look that up while you're computing.
He really
over-
doesn't want to look that.
He
up.
doesn't want. But I liked it. I think it's a little bit too I guess
Crystal Bally.
Yeah, just predictive that this is how these things are going to occur. So it's a little bit too sure. I mean, there's a lot of factors that could prevent this from happening this way, but it's certainly a well worth reading, and just the ideas within that. It's a great presentation of liberating technology. It's just unfortunately you can't be so sure about these
awesome.
things.
Let me tell you why. In the future, we will have flying cars that you build in your own living room out of feces.
And we're back to feces. So speaking of which,
All human waste will turn into valuable material items and cash prizes.
so you're saying that the means of production are within my bowels?
Or within your bowels, yes. You
All right.
own the means of production of feces. Speaking of feces, we've got a T-shirt to give away.
All right, I was just going to ask about that. What's the contest this week?
I don't know. I don't. What have we been talking about?
We've been talking about hegemony, and someone says Darian said power. You got to take a shot now. I guess.
So you've been
I
saying
guess
power over and over.
So something to do with power and hegemony.
And Osama. We got to throw him in there because he was like 45 minutes of the beginning.
So
How about like best single sentence that combines the word power, hegemony, and Osama bin Laden?
Okay.
Sound
All right.
good?
That,
All right.
that sounds good.
So you've got 15 minutes in the chat room. Go ahead and fire away. You've already got a T-shirt. Pangaphony saying, "Oh boy, this talk of feces sure makes me want a T-shirt." And it's like, well, too bad you've already got one. So it's like whether you want the feces shirt or not, you now have it.
We predicted that this was going to occur. That very rapidly would all of our live listeners
We
have
get a
T-shirts.
shirt. Yep.
See, we need to figure out a way to get our non-live listeners to give a crap.
Well, we tried doing the email thing, but nobody emails us.
That's what I mean. So either we don't actually have listeners who
Or-
download, like it's only Google or something downloading the podcast, or our listeners just don't give a crap.
Or they're astoundingly lazy and don't want T-shirts.
Which proves that anarchy can't work. So, unless you're a statist who, since you like the state, you must like all states, and therefore the most powerful states, and therefore you're Hitler. You should really get in on these things. This is your last warning. Whatever. Let's open it up to the email people too. You've got more than one T-shirt. It's gonna be. We're gonna
He's giving away T-shirts like hotcakes.
like feces, and
all right.
so we've got one T-shirt for the chat, one T-shirt for email. Best use of the words hegemony, power, and Osama bin Laden
in
one
one sentence. One single sentence.
One single sentence.
They don't just have to email us. If they actually want to get their voice on the air, they could call us during the week and leave a message.
Yeah, actually, we got our voicemail set up now, so
It should be. Yeah, I haven't actually tested it.
we could get
personally,
that.
but
We could
it should
get
be.
that. There you go. You could call us too if you're extra. Most people prefer email over calling usually.
I know, but they could be they could try to imitate you or me or Darren. Be like, I'm totally bombastic, and this is my sentence. Wow!
I'm Diane Rehm. I want a T-shirt.
I like the accents that you guys, start using when you're just
That's-
That's how you
high-pitch.
talk, Darian. That's how you talk.
My name's Darren. I got a real high pitched voice. For no apparent reason.
punch Nazis in the face. Woohoo!
I hate communists.
So here's another contest. You could win all the T-shirts in the world if you for the best imitation of any of the cast members. If you by calling in,
What?
but
How many
since
T-shirts are you giving away, dude?
all of them in the
Well,
world,
see, this
except,
is-
except no one's gonna have the best imitation, so therefore no one's gonna get all the T-shirts.
So you're
in the world.
just screwing our fans. You're
So-
like, you can call us, but we hate you, and we're not going to give you anything. That's what you're saying.
See,
Darren.
Ryan, Darian does not have to feel the effects of creating
Exactly,
a T-shirt.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
you have all the externalities.
You
of
want to
his-
talk about
See, this is socialized profits and privatized effort, privatized production. So you produce and I reap the benefits because that's how Marx would want it.
You know what stinks? When I probably made like 12 t-shirts one night, right? And I just made them based on me. So I'm like, oh, well, obviously everybody who has the same ideas as me wears like a large or extra large like I do, right? Mostly on the extra large side. Of the shirts I've given away, we've gotten small, medium, extra, extra large, like, and basically none that fit within that large or extra large category.
It seems like most people would be within, large
You'd
or
think,
extra large.
but not people who listen to our show.
Well, maybe you should, sew them, tailor them.
So I
You
should
should get
put
custom
Two
tailored.
smalls together is an extra large.
All right, so we had some other tech news, I believe, for the last 10 minutes of the show.
We did.
Yeah, I thought so. What was that? There was tech news that you shared.
I'm sure I could come up with something. There's
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Speaking of retaliation, this is sort of tech and Bin Laden related. I heard that Samsung got threatened, and I didn't get a chance to read the article.
By you?
No, not
you
by
call
me.
them up? You're like, damn it, Samsung.
It's all your fault, though. Osama bin Laden was caught. I'm gonna catch you all. No, I saw it on my way out of work that of all places, like Samsung got threats. I don't know where or when or under what conditions, but
if Sam hadn't sung, then no one would know where Obama was.
Go back to sleep.
Yeah, that was that.
Jeez.
That was no.
That was awful.
That's right. It's the Puncast.
No, it was.
No, it's not.
No, it was just wrong.
We're gonna throw you out.
Except you can't because you're a pacifist. Therefore, I win all arguments.
I'm gonna socially ostracize you.
Out of this room. Socially awesome strives me.
Oh, I got some tech news. I put together a new server for not technically just for Thinking Liberty, but it's my new HTPC, and it's gonna not quite yet has all the Thinking Liberty streaming, but it's gonna be more badass than the existing server that we're using.
Good to know. I have some 1920s tech news. I recently bought a new manual lawnmower.
Nice.
So my old lawnmower just wasn't quite getting the job done. So I'm like, I wonder what happens if you don't buy a cheap version of the real lawnmower, REEL, if for those of you looking it up. I'm like, but you actually buy like the industrial version. And I wonder who buys industrial real lawnmowers. So I looked it up, and it turns out that prisons buy industrial real lawnmowers. And the Amish had this design for the real lawnmower that the prison industrial complex, basically they would purchase their lawnmowers from the Amish, and the Amish could not supply them fast enough. So the Amish exported the job to China. But coming out of China, the lawnmowers first go to the Amish, who lubricate them and make sure that they meet their standards, who then send them off to the prisons, and the prisoners use it to cut the grass.
Wow, the Amish are a lot more evil than I thought. I'm sure it's all of them, too.
Well,
we're just going to go for collective guilt here.
Well, didn't you see that episode of X-Files? Where they were like...
Maybe.
There was
like
that
10
one...
years ago?
Might be more than 10 years ago
Yeah.
now. There's that one episode where they've got the Amish people, and they've got isn't it that they have like they're like bringing back people to life in these catacombs underneath the barn or whatever. You don't remember that one? I watched the
maybe.
entire season
I
like
don't know.
a couple months ago.
I don't know. It's been a while. Did you see that XKCD comic that's like how to make someone feel old? And it's like a chart.
Oh, yeah,
It's
with
like,
all the different
did
movies.
you realize that these
That
there's
the
a list of
Matrix came
movies.
out not last decade, but the decade before that.
Yeah, that was the
Wow.
best one.
I mean, that's only 11 years ago, but still, or
Yeah.
12 years ago.
I
1999.
remember seeing like I don't know one of my younger Facebook friends write about how he'd seen The Matrix the first time. I'm like, what? This was like a year ago. I'm like, what?
Are they making another Matrix movie?
They should make a prequel and a remake.
Not that I've
and
heard of.
with digitally enhanced effects.
I had a student tell me, which means it's not necessarily true, but somebody told me that they saw a preview for another Matrix movie.
Not that I'm pretty sure that would be all over the tech's websites.
Yeah, I thought so
and
too.
I haven't heard anything. Here's the. It's called the 2011 Guide to Making People Feel Old Using Movie Release Dates.
This is at xkcd.com.
Yeah, it's comic 891, and it has their age from 16 to over 35, and everyone in between, and you put together this phrase. It says, "Do you realize that?" And then you say some movie came out, and then some description of when it came out, and then if the person is, well, I'm 30, so do you realize that Home Alone came out more than 20 years ago? See, that one didn't hit. I didn't really like Home Alone, even though I love John, what the hell is his name? The guy that did Home Alone and Ferris Bueller and 16 Candles and Breakfast Club.
Waters?
Holtz
No.
or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But in any case, Terminator 2 was the one that got me, and that's supposed to be for a 29-year-old, so maybe I'm really 29 at heart, but it said, do you realize that Terminator 2 came out 20 years ago? I remember when that movie came out, and I guess I was 10 at the time, or no, it was 1992.
John Hughes, by the way.
Yeah,
according
John
to the chat
Hughes,
room.
that's right.
According to Panjafo, you can't
Yes,
Panjafoni.
John Hughes. And Terminator 2, I remember going to the theater, watching it with my father, and just being like, holy crap, the graphics are freaking amazing, and just draw,
Pew!
just
I don't know. I was kind of surprised about Home Alone. I mean, I because I remember everybody watching that when I was a kid, like, and I'm
That
not
was
even
like the
26
Christmas
yet.
movie for
yeah,
a while.
you're younger. How old are you, Darian?
I'm turning 26 on Friday.
Okay,
actually.
so for you, it would be The Matrix or Toy Story.
Yes. Well, I didn't really care about Toy Story, but The Matrix, yeah, I was like, not that was the best. Not,
That was my
not
senior
this
year
decade,
of high school.
not last decade, but the decade before that.
Yeah, I
It's
remember
like, wow.
when we went to college, we
had a
watched the bootleg version of The Matrix. It wasn't out on DVD yet.
Yeah, it was the summer before we actually started.
Right.
We spent like the night at the college, and they had a bootleg DVD of The Matrix, which didn't have the final cut of the music. So the scene in the first movie where they're in the nightclub, you have Keanu Reeves and whatever her name is, the woman that played Trinity. They're like yelling at each other like they're in a loud, dance club, but there's no actual music playing.
It's fantastic.
And the rest of the movie you really didn't notice so much, but that particular scene was really ridiculous. Without, I think it was it White Zombie that was playing? I forget.
Maybe.
Either White Zombie or Rob Zombie. I don't remember.
But yeah. So and then after 35, it says, or over 35, it says, quote, "Hey, did you see that chart? You matched the age of a movie that. Oh, right. Sorry, it only goes up to 35. I guess you're really not aimed at." It's really not aimed at older people.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
And The Little Mermaid is for 33, 34, 35-year-olds. And do you realize that it's closer to the moon landing than present day? Which
That's kind of a brutal way of putting it.
Yeah, I remember Little Mermaid coming out, and yeah, that's it doesn't make me feel good.
I remember the VHS cover that had like the penis in the
On
background.
it.
Yeah.
You can
That's
still
good
Always
times.
remembers the penis. Now,
Always.
does anyone get like a penis on a Thinking Liberty shirt ever? Does that ever?
That doesn't
Get
happen.
mistakenly happen.
The Thinking Liberty shirts get made up and sent out, and that's really about all. Occasionally, they come with wooden spoons. Last one I sent out went out with the wooden spoon.
But they're checked for penis at the factory by inspectors.
At the factory? You mean my basement?
That's full of mushrooms.
There's no mushrooms in my basement. I have a dehumidifier, I'll have you know.
Okay, so I don't think anybody entered the contest yet, which means you all lose.
Well, it's okay. We can, if nobody does it during the show, we still have the email open all week for, once again, we will remind you, using the words hegemony, power, and Osama bin Laden in one sentence.
Now,
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be strikingly amazing.
Oh,
or
I know.
Something.
People are definitely going to do it.
yeah, I think I thought of a better one last time.
Okay. All right.
I didn't
Well,
think
you
of a
can't
good one
win.
this time.
Did you
though.
make the past 6 shirts too, or no? Wait, no, you didn't.
Yeah. Well, I obviously have other responsibilities.
You obviously do
that
not
can't be
love,
outsourced.
Do not love Thinking Liberty as much as Bile and I do.
Obviously not.
Obviously.
So, did we have any other tech news? I mean, we had a bunch of stories get posted in the chat room, but I don't know. I think we're running a little bit low on time
Yeah,
here.
it looks like we've got
It's
about
like-
a minute.
Uno minuto. So how do you want to wrap this up? How do you want to summarize?
USA, USA, USA.
I might have to clip this show up just for that.
that like I think that just summarizes everything. I mean, you can't really go anywhere after there's nothing else to say but USA. And,
USA. I love when stuff is made in USA. It's a very high quality material.
Oh wait, we got somebody who participated. Wow. All right. Osama bin Laden power has developed great hegemony.
is this a hegemony over 9,000?
Sure. I think this guy wins. So, being that you participated, Santiago, you win the chat room one. We'll keep the email one going for everybody else. And
Okay, and Thinking Liberty 0042 Tennyson says you got. I guess it's I don't know, but it says you guys never have time for the tech news I put up. So
On
we'll
that
have to-
note-
we'll have to look at all this tech news and we'll read it next week because we like our live listeners that much. We also like our other listeners too. Just not enough to
The people
tell them
that
live.
the people that complain about not getting the news in, we pay with your donations for a phone line that you guys could use to call in and rant
you're
about
being
whatever.
mean to our listeners today, by the way.
I'm not being mean. I'm
It's
just
like-
being honest. I'm just
We're
being
being
honest.
so astoundingly
The
mean.
fact is that some people give us donations, and we use that donations to cover the cost of the show. And one of the costs of the show is having a call-in line. And I have to say that when I do podcasts for Julian Heiklin, it gets a million times more use than the Thinking Liberty account that it's tied to, because Thinking Liberty people don't use it.
I think we're all a little bit younger than the people listening to Julian.
Maybe, but I'm actually using it to take like phone calls every week to do interviews, and we don't use it nearly as much.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess we spend all our money on, quality writers to make sure there's great content for this show.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah, if only somebody would, proof the last script they complained about for a commercial.
Well,
Nah, who said they would do that last week?
I-
You did.
See, originally, I just said, I made suggestions, and you didn't give me anything else, so this is your fault.
I think we need to have like an off-site. Like one of these days, you guys get maybe not an off-site, but you guys can come here like one weekend when you're not doing anything, and we can just record these crazy commercials for our fans.
I think that's a good idea.
Let's do that. Let's set a weekend for that, but after my papers are due for this semester.
Always on Darian's schedule.
Slacker.
Yes.
All right, wrap us
All
up,
right.
Darian.
All right, all you slackers, all you awesome people out there, all you really on task people, whoever you are,
Most angst-filled episode ever.
we're really glad. We're really glad that you're listening, and that's awesome. And we like to live in a free world, so why don't you make your world a little more free? Good night. Abrupt.
Water's leaking from the deep above. Makes me shaky, pacing